All right, folks. Thank you again for joining us for this informational webinar on ITIL. For those of you that I've not met, my name is Wendy Farsing, and I am the Customer Service Manager at Max. And I'll tell you, I wish we were all in a big room together. This COVID and lack of people around me is really starting to get to me. I'm sure many of you might feel the same way. But I really, really thank you for joining us for this informative webinar. If during the course of the webinar you have any questions, please use the chat feature. I will be monitoring the chat so that we can ask questions if need be. We are planning a kind of a Q&A at the tail end of the presentation. It gives me much honor to turn this over to our subject matter expert, Judy Sanker. And so, Judy, if you would like to take over, it is all yours.
Wow. Thank you all for joining us today and taking some time out of your very busy schedules, and especially on a Monday. And I know here in the Cincinnati area is kind of another gloomy, rainy day. So hopefully this will be the light of your day today. So we will get right to the content. But thank you very much, Wendy and Max Technical Training, for asking me to present on this topic that I am so passionate about. So, what is ITIL4 and why should you care? Right. So, if you look at this picture, this is the new face of ITIL4, and it replaces previous versions of ITIL, like version 3 or version 2, whatever version you may be familiar with from the past. And it replaces specifically that diagram. It kind of looked like a bullseye with all of the 5 stages of the service life cycle. Right. So ITIL4 came out in February of 2019. So it seems unrealistic, but yes, it's been almost 2 years ago. So it is catching on. Very many organizations are taking a dip into ITIL4 and understanding how is it different? Why should we care? Well, because of the way the world and our organizations work today. Right. So I will explain some of those specific reasons of why things have evolved to this new methodology, this new and being able to put that into words that you can understand. And please, if I say something that you just really don't understand or you have not been familiar with the concept, please chat that in and Wendy will bring it up and I will explain it for her. So a little about me. Yes, I've been working after I retired from Procter & Gamble in Cincinnati, Ohio. In 2012, I went straight to work as a consultant and a trainer with Max Technical Training. That is one of my ultimate best decisions in life because it gives me that capability to be a continuous learner and to keep my certifications up to date and relevant in today's world. And if we go back to maybe 8 or 10 years ago, things in the business world were starting to change. I know where I worked, we had some agile teams. We had some teams that were flowing to the work. We had some different processes. And I will go ahead and say this up front. Some of them were very bureaucratic, very rule based. Now, for information security, of course, we have to be rule based. But there are other processes that we use in running our global business services that were very rigid and controlled. And quite simply, I will say, because we could, right? We were all about being very stable and having that reliability of our services. And so there was a lot of discussion, sometimes some debates about these changes that were happening in our environments and all of the rigor and all of the control that we had. And hopefully, some of you have been in this situation and you're smiling because you're saying, oh, yes, that's my organization. We have a very rigid change control process. All changes need to be submitted by the third day of the week, and we're going to discuss them on the fifth day of the week. And we, in our infinite wisdom, in the CAB, the Change Advisory Board review meeting, will make a decision. Does this change get approved, or do we need more information? Does it get scheduled? Who's going to be doing the work? Right. So as I set the stage here for ITIL4, keep in mind that ITIL4 is very flexible. It has evolved to incorporate other frameworks and methodologies such as Agile, Lean, and DevOps. Right. And we'll talk about the ITIL4 key concepts. How can we use ITIL4 to co-create value with the business? So depending on your come from state, whether or not you're new to ITIL, then great. We can mold you straight away with ITIL4. If you're coming to us from ITIL version 3, remember that we had two different releases of version 3. We had one in 2007, which was all about the service lifecycle, and we had an update to version 3 in 2011 that added additional processes and additional workflows and maybe some integration of maybe some of these principles, the 7 guiding principles. I'm happy to say that those 7 or 9 guiding principles are now down to 7 guiding principles here with ITIL4. And they have taken on the exact same meaning that they did with version 3. So not everything has changed. And then I'll talk a little bit about the road ahead. How do we get from whatever previous version we used or are using within our organizations? How do we adopt ITIL version 4 and adapt it to meet our organization's needs? And just like anything else, this is not going to be that is going to, this week we're using version 3, next week we're using ITIL4. No, this is going to evolve over time, right? ITIL as a best practice for IT service management has been around for over 30 years, right? It is not a standard. We've learned that time and time again with our ITIL methodology and framework. It is a best practice, meaning it's tried and true. It has been the leading methodology and framework for IT service management for a very long time. And why is that important? Well, adopting this existing framework means you are adopting the proven practices that have been validated by multiple organizations. And now those practices can be adapted to meet your organization's specific circumstances, your needs, your goals, right? So ITIL4 is an evolution to how we improve design, we manage, and we improve our IT services to deliver value to the business, right? And we're talking about some of the ITIL terminology. You will find that many of the things are the same that they meant in ITIL version 3. So it's not a complete throw everything out and learn the new. So it's an evolution, and it provides organizations with this comprehensive framework that you can use to deliver better services for your organizations and to deliver and align to these other frameworks that I've talked about. So if we look at the scope of ITIL, version 3 or 2011, or if you go back as far as I do, back to 2003, we had ITIL version 2. In those days, we had two big books. We had the service support book and the service delivery book, often referred to as the red book and the blue book, right? Then in 2007, we have these various books or publications that aligned with the service lifecycle. So we had service strategy, we had service design, we had service transition, we had service operations, and then wrapped all around these was the continuous service improvement book, right? But the original founders of ITIL are still very much proponents of the ITIL4 in understanding how do we get to this next level of evolution, and how do we ensure that whatever the demand is or the opportunity within our organization, we now have a framework that really does rely on delivering value to our customers, value to our employees, value to our stakeholders, right? Is what we're putting out there being consumed by our stakeholders, our employees, our business partners to deliver value for the business, for our organization. And while we had these various stages of the life cycle, they aligned somewhat with the SDLC, right? So the framework that developers used. But notice here within the build area, we didn't really attack or be able to align with that whole build stage. However, over the last 10 or so years, we've had Agile, we've had Lean that have been used within our organizations. And if you're like my organization that was dabbing into Agile or a little bit of Lean or a little bit of DevOps, even before it was coined DevOps, we had some very interesting discussions because Agile, right? Lean is about removing waste, right? And improving throughput, the flow of work. DevOps is about aligning development, right? Of our services, aligning dev with ops. And to be honest, I've been part of this DevOps movement since about 2013. And much of that movement was focused on dev. Some people call it big dev, little ops. Oh, ops has to change the way that they're doing everything to incorporate agile projects from dev. I'm happy to say that that has evolved. Dev and ops both have expectations of each other, and they are willing to collaborate and work together to deliver what is best for the organization. Does it involve accepting more risk? Sometimes, right? The need for speed is so important, especially in today's culture, right? Our business partners want those applications and services delivered yesterday, right? So developers have been to get code pushed out the door, sometimes getting into issues with ops because they may not have all of the documentation. They may not have all the I's dotted and the T's crossed. They may not have done enough testing. So DevOps now allows us to use something called the CI/CD pipeline, automation of those artifacts, the testing through continuous integration, storing their source code in a repository, and as soon as it is stored, it is tested. And we also have continuous delivery. That code is always in a releasable state, right? And because we have that automation in place, It makes it a lot easier for operations teams to be able to say, okay, we approve this change and hold the right teams and people accountable for the success of that change, right? And SRE, Site Reliability Engineering, started way back in 2003 by Google, allowing for our projects, our work to be prioritized, not only by what our customers want, yes, that's important, not just what features and functionality do we need, but how do we make our applications and services more reliable? Right? At the end of the day, it is important for us to have such quality and reliability. So why did ITIL need to evolve? First of all, for digital transformation, transforming the way we work, the way we do business, going right. If there's anything that has come out of this pandemic with COVID, it is many of us, not just in IT, right? Everyone in the business has gone virtual, working from home, right? And I remember that day when the determination was made that all companies will work from home starting maybe in 2 or 3 days. We didn't have a whole lot of lead time there to get prepared. Some organizations had their maturity already set to that capability to be able to work from home. But let's be honest, many organizations did not. They had to figure it out, right? And with hopefully some success. Right? Another reason we needed to involve with ITIL, minimizing silos. Right? We don't want different ways to work within our organization and create more silos. No, we want horizontal pathways across these silos so that we can improve the speed at which we can deliver and we can reduce that bureaucracy. Because quite honestly, our customers, our consumers, our business partners want high velocity IT, right? And our organizations are working to digitize all of our products and services. And we need to co-create value, right? In previous versions of ITIL, it was all about creating value for the customer. Well, that's still there, but they've added these two letters before creation of value to co-create. That means we as service providers have some expectations and our customers have some expectations of them, right? How many times have you gone to your customer and said, we're ready for you to test this aspect or this feature or this functionality. We're ready to roll it out, but we need your approval, right? User acceptance testing. And the business comes back and says, oh, it'll probably be 3 or 4 weeks before we are able to test that. Oh, what happened to our speed, right? It just went down the tubes, right? So we want to be able to handle changes more consistently, aligning with these other methodologies such as Agile and Lean and DevOps, right? Always has some nods to application management and how ITIL aligns with project management, especially in service design. But for the most part, development was excluded. And it wasn't because it was intentional, it just happened. And then things started evolving much more quickly than had ever been expected. So while ITIL 3 emphasizes need for continual improvement, there was really not an emphasis on customer experience and the need to capture customer feedback. DevOps has introduced this capability to gather feedback early and often, right? With the 3 ways of DevOps. We want to improve flow, gather that feedback iteratively throughout the whole cycle, and experiment and learn, right? So ITIL4 incorporates those other concepts or modernizes IT service management So in order to remain relevant, we had to address new service management challenges, such as being agile. We had to transform the way we were doing business, utilizing the potential of modern technology, evolving the way that we work. And here again, balancing the need for stability and predictability with this rising need for operational agility and increased velocity. Velocity in DevOps dictionary says work we can get done, right? We use Kanban boards. We have three columns, right? The work to do, the work in progress, and the work that's finished or done. We have to identify and define what does done really mean. But we want to move and pull that work from left to right. We want to have that capability to get work done, right? So some of these other frameworks, the ideas, the concepts have been incorporated into ITIL, right? And as we look at ITIL as a framework, remember it's a guidance. And previous versions have always called it a guidance, but in some organizations, it became kind of the way that we worked and was very bureaucratic or had mandatory controls. So adopting an existing framework means you're adopting the proven practices validated by multiple organizations, and then we adapt them to meet our organization's goals. Right? So ignoring public frameworks can needlessly place an organization at a disadvantage. Right? So ITIL4 updates this guidance, provides organizations this ever-changing need to update and change the way that they do service management to reduce those challenges. And there's a tremendous benefit for the organization in creating, expanding, and perhaps most importantly, continually improving all of the service management capabilities. Developments such as cloud computing, infrastructure as a service, machine learning, blockchain have opened up other opportunities for value creation and led to IT becoming an important business driver and source for that competitive advantage. Just think about all of the technology breakthroughs, robotics, artificial intelligence, security as code, right? 3D printing. So this fourth industrial revolution is paving the way for transformative changes, radically disrupting every business sector, the way that we do business. So a little more about these components of ITIL4, right? The very first one down here, right, is called the service value system, right? The service value system. It replaces the service life cycle from previous versions. And we'll take a deeper dive into each one of these. We also have core of ITIL4, the service value chain. These are activities that we do, and they're not iterative, even though previous versions of ITIL with the service lifecycle were never intended to be iterative. Many organizations delivered them that way, right? And the third component, 4 dimensions of service management. So including those 4 dimensions, people and organizations, information and technology, partners and suppliers, and value streams and processes, right? So we need all 4 dimensions, and we have to use all 4 dimensions in delivering our services, from creation of those new services or updating or changing the way that those services deliver value. So we always have to ensure that we have the 4 dimensions, replacing those 4 P's of previous versions. Remember the 4 P's: people, products, partners, right? And how we're delivering those services. being able to adapt to a new way, focused on value, right? Principle based, right? Not bureaucratic, you must do it this way. It is flexible. We want to create value streams. Value streams came to us from Lean, being able to map out all of the inputs, all of the outputs for each and every activity across various stakeholders with the goal of streamlining the process to ensure that every activity, every step in the value stream is creating value. Otherwise, why would we do it? Right? Not just because we can. No, we want it to add value. Right? Being able to introduce some of those other new ways of working, right, for the tasks that we perform. DevOps uses a method called chaos engineering to build resiliency of their systems. The resiliency, that ability to bounce back even when we have failures. Right? Site reliability engineering uses a concept called error, meaning we have so much time within that service objective, right, which then aligns with service level agreements. How much time do we have within a month's period of time? And how are we going to prioritize all of our requests? Maybe it's a business request for a new feature, new functionality. Maybe it's a security request. Maybe it's an infrastructure move, updating our infrastructure. Maybe it's moving to the cloud. So we need to prioritize those appropriately. Site reliability allows us to realize that quality and reliability are just as important to that value equation as prioritizing those activities along with creating new versions or new releases. Right? So site reliability allows us to be able to adapt to what adds value within our organizations. And value streams and processes, right? ITIL version 3 had lots of processes, 26 to be exact. In ITIL version 4, we call these things practices, and they are evolved from those processes. We'll take a look at all of those. The processes are just one dimension of the practice. And each ITIL4 practice guide includes information about all 4 dimensions of service management. Right? So I know when I first took a look at this more than 2 years ago, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is so different. But really, these are kind of upfront, the differences, but as we get into the content, you'll see a lot of similarities. Right? ITIL4 and lean and agile and continuous, whether it's continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous deployments, continuous testing, right? All to make our applications and services more resilient. So while lean helps to improve that flow and reduce waste, right? Agile adds close and iterative collaboration with users, right? Just enough value. So we release it. And in an Agile or a Scrum team, we have the minimum viable product. Is there just enough for the customer to get value? Is there just enough for them to believe that we're going to go back with that next sprint and create more value, add more features and functions, add additional capabilities, right? Resilient, maintaining workable availability and performance, and continuous, fast, reliable deployments, continuous integration, right, with our code, continuous delivery, meaning we have the capability to push a button to release it, right? Push a button to deploy it, right? And push a button to test it, right? And the whole reason that we want to automate this manual work is to free us up for more value added work that we can do. Work on some of those projects that we haven't ever had time to work on because we're manually doing so many things, right? So again, it's an evolution. We start with low risk kinds of automation projects, things that we do every day, every week, every month, right? Measures and reporting, great use of time to create some automation to pull all of those metrics together. And then to verify and validate, do those measures really tell the right story? Right? We don't want the what we call the watermelon effect. It's all the scorecard is all green on the outside, but it's red on the inside because our customers don't believe those measures. We need to measure what matters. Lots of different books and ideas and webcasts on measurement, right? So ITIL4 aligns with DevOps, right? To establish this culture and environment where building, testing, and releasing software can happen rapidly, frequently, and more reliably. And even if we release as this small increment and it fails for some reason, probably because the environments are different, or maybe what we tested with, the credentials are not what our customers' credentials have, then we can pull it back, right? It's not that big of a deal to pull it back and put the other one right back in because of continuous delivery, right? So DevOps builds on those characteristics by combining good governance and a holistic approach to value creation. So as I said, one of the components is the service value system, right? Think of this as the face of ITIL4. It's a management system that ITIL4 sits on. We have two inputs here, opportunities and demands. Opportunities, things that white space that if we had time and resources and money to go flush out a new service, can we drive that through this model to achieve value? Or it could be a demand. Oh, this service isn't working as expected, so we have an incident. We have a demand to fix that incident and resolve it within the amount of time that we're expected to resolve it, and it adds value back to our customers, right? Notice around all of this outside area are guiding principles and continual improvement. We like to look at continual improvement for not only the service value system, but the service value chain and all of the components. Governance supports our guiding principles and ensuring that our organization is well directed and controlling what matters. Of course, if we're publicly traded on Wall Street, we need to abide and be in compliance with Sarbanes-Oxley, right? If we have an ISO, let's say 9001 manufacturing quality standard, then we want to ensure that we continue to meet those objectives, right? For organizations in service management, the standard is ISO 20000, right? ITIL4 aligns with ISO 20000. I'll go ahead and skip service value chain and practices, right? But this is kind of the driving model that provides that unified value-focused directions for organizations. Service value chain. Think of these as the activities, right? This is the operating model within IT service management, right? This value chain is flexible and adaptive, and it's rather than tightly coupled, right? So rules-based, very bureaucratic. It is loosely coupled, right? Working with not only loosely coupled architecture, but loosely coupled and flexible practices that may have multiple processes and value streams composed of those, and understanding that the four dimensions all play a part, right? Trying to get away from stage gates, right? Stage gates where we have very rigid, controlled deliverables. In some cases, we may still need those. In other cases, we'll have to take a look to see, do we really need all of that rigorous control? So we need to step back and look at the risks and what kind of application or service is this delivering value and for whom, right? It reflects this full life cycle from idea all the way through to value and service consumption. And it supports multiple value streams and multiple feedback loops. These little arrows on this outside line, those are areas for feedback, right? And we always want to incorporate feedback loops and have those be iterative in activities. Allow us to configure these value streams within the practices that are needed. We won't use all 34 practices, just like we won't use all of these value chain activities for every single thing. We will need to decide, okay, if a demand comes in, who do we need to engage with? What kind of prior planning was done at a strategic level? Is this project in scope for what is aligning with our strategy? What about designing and transitioning? Designing what the solution will be, ensuring that we have those key requirements up front. And when it gets ready, when we get ready to transition it down here, are they ready? Do they have enough so that they can solve and answer questions at the service desk? Components that we might need, things that we need to buy or build. So making a decision, is that something we're going to buy as a software off of the shelf, or is it something we're going to build, right? So in aligning, improve along all of these products and services, right? So for a request for a new service or a service component, the value stream might say, okay, we've got a demand, we're going to engage, we're going to go up into plan, then we're going to design and build, then we're going to go back up to maybe redesign, finally get into transition. Now we're ready to deliver and support this product and service. Our service catalog has been updated. All of the communications have gone out. We deliver, and now we start measuring the value that was achieved. Okay. So value chain activities. This is another example for a request for a standard component or a service, right? We call that service request management. And since this value stream includes information security management, this might be a simple request for access to a SharePoint site or some content or an application, right? So we engage, right? We engage with the service desk through specific forms that have been thought out and pre-filled in, where the end user can request that capability to have access. They engage, service desk engages with the end user. They probably will not need to obtain, they would have to obtain an approval of some kind. They deliver and they support, and then they ask for value, right? Through feedback. Did we solve this request, right? And did it meet your needs? And remember, information security had been involved up here in the planning stage to say, what are all, maybe for certain groups of people, they're allowed access, but for other groups of people, it needs a separate approval process, right? So you can see how these processes, these practices fit into our value stream. Another example, we have incidents, right? Or a request for support, right? We have service desk, right? Looking at what are those incidents coming in. They follow the incident management process, right? They engage with the end user. They may need to obtain and build. Maybe it's someone's printer isn't working, right? So maybe they need to make sure that the driver that they're using on that printer is still valid. Maybe it's they need to look at the queue, right? If it's a network printer, is the queue all backed up? Is that why they're not getting their print, right? Deliver and support. Does it add value? Let's go back through incident management process to ensure that we can make improvements, right? If we didn't reach that value solution within the time period that our customers had agreed to, then we have an opportunity for improvement, right? So we have continual improvement, maybe of the incident management process or practice, maybe with the way the service desk is equipped, right, with their knowledge articles, which is knowledge management. So we pick and choose which practices we will need to utilize across these value streams. And in previous versions of ITIL, we had things called functions, right? We had the service desk, technical management, application management, IT operations management. And notice now that those are considered to be practices, right? So the terminology for a process has evolved into this word of practice, right? And notice that each ITIL practice supports multiple service value chain activities, right? That was the plan: improve, engage, design and transition, obtain and build, deliver and support, right? So we need to look at all of those across the 4 dimensions: people and organizations, information and technology, partners and suppliers, and value streams and processes. So we will have many different processes as part of a practice, right? A practice, the set of organizational resources, keyword here, resources to perform the work to accomplish an objective. Notice that all of the previous processes are now practices in the domain of service management, right? Those are all very similar to previous versions. However, we have 2 other domains of practices. We have general management and we have technical management practices, right? So in the ITIL4 foundation class, which there's several of those coming up, you'll learn about some of these key practices, right? Knowledge management, for example, has moved to general management. Notice that continual improvement is a practice. It was also part of the service value system, and it's also part of the service value chain, right? So if nothing else out of this webinar that you gather is continual improvement is important. It's not just every 3rd month we're going to look at our CSI register. No, this is going to be evolving to be a habit, right? Notice here that organizational change management is under general management. That's how do we change the thoughts and beliefs of the people in the organization, versus how we have change enablement. This just used to be called change management, and then it briefly went to the term change control. Now it is called change enablement. We want to be flexible and enable these changes to go through depending upon the risk level of the change, right? And who has performed all of that work leading up to the change. Then one other thing that has changed is we used to have release and deployment all together as a process. And release and deployment have been evolved into 2 different practices. Deployment says we're moving this code, maybe from a pre-production environment to production, right? We're moving it. Release says we're going to turn it on to our customers. And we might have various ways of turning it on. Maybe it's by site, maybe it's by location, maybe it's by customer group, maybe it's a canary release. oh, we're going to, just like in the old days of the mine, send, this out to a few people and see how it works for them. And we might have blue-green releases. Google does this all the time, blue-green releases. And then they'll go back and gather feedback. Did you like this way of presenting this screen, or did you like that way? Right? And then they usually go with whatever has the highest number of acceptance criteria. Right? So, not that you would have to know all 30 these practices, but there are some, like I pointed out, that are new, some that are updated, and some that are these processes really have just changed names into practices. Right? We've had demand management in version 3. Now it's still under the technical management process and practice domain group. So lots of different, but more or less the same, like for incident, problem, release, those things have not changed. Relationship management has changed a little bit in that it is not just business relationship, it's relationships with suppliers, it's relationship with our customers, it's relationships with anyone. Continual improvement is the key, right? So adopting this service management approach and adapting it to meet your own organization's needs and circumstances, leveraging the guiding principles, right? So here are those 7 guiding principles. This is absolutely my favorite part of ITIL. 4, focusing on value, right? So let's ensure that the value is drawn from lean and service management. The first principle of lean is thinking to define value precisely from the perspective of the customer. Start where you are, right? It's a good part, integral to continuous improvement. Let's not throw away what we've already done, right? We want to honor the past because we made those really tough decisions maybe 5 years ago, 4 years ago for a reason. So let's start with those and progress iteratively aligns perfectly with Agile. Let's get feedback all along the way. Let's have many more releases that are smaller, right? That add in that value. And let's be able to be more agile, right? Instead of this huge project that takes, 19, 18 months to deliver, let's break it down into sprints, right? Let's do Scrum, let's do Agile. Let's collaborate with other groups and promote visibility, visibility of the work, visibility of the key things that are holding me back, right? In a Scrum daily stand-up, we talk about 3 things. What did I get done since yesterday? What's on my plate to do today, right? To finish. And what are my impediments? What's holding me back that the Scrum Master will then go solve? Think and work holistically, always taking our customer's point of view. Keep it simple and practical. Yes, when we're releasing some new version of software or some product or service, right? We've all kind of been trained in the past. Oh, we need to write this big cookbook and SOP guide. Well, maybe it's going to change more iteratively, faster. So that would all be rework. Let's keep it simple and always optimize, streamline, take out the fat, take out the waste before we automate the work that we do, right? Aligning with DevOps in so many ways, right? We continue our journey, we honor the past because those decisions were right decisions. They were correct decisions at the time that we made them. Now with new version of ITIL and these other frameworks, it may be too bureaucratic. You may be getting a lot of pushback within your organization, especially around change. My thought is that if a developer has been testing that software, they've done peer review of their code, they've done paired programming, why on earth do we need to come before a cab? Right? We already have the proof, the evidence. And when that change rolls out, right, it deploys and then it's released, we're able to then go back to the one or team that had approved that change and see if there's any room for improvement, right? Always going back to good project management methodology and say, let's capture our lessons learned. What can we do in the future to make it better? Right? So rest assured that these core concepts remain intact. Your investments in ITIL are protected and they're able to uh, help us figure out how do we evolve. We look to the future, leverage my ITIL. So again, go to this website, axelos.com, the owners of ITIL, and look under my ITIL. With every certification that you get with ITIL4, you get a free 1-year membership. So, right, utilize your resources. Go to my ITIL as soon as you get that ITIL4 Foundation certificate to learn more. Right? Many of you may start with ITIL Foundation. That is kind of the baseline. Even if you've had previous versions of ITIL Foundation, still take the ITIL Foundation, ITIL4 Foundation course and pass that course and get the certification before you can go to any of these advanced classes, right? We have the Create, Deliver, and Support. That's for practitioners to help teach them how to create these value streams. This under the ITIL Managing Professional, right? You have all of these different classes. Drive stakeholder value. That's about the customer journey, all of the inputs and outputs for the customer. High velocity IT. It's all about digitization, making sure that our products and services are digital, no more paper based, right? We're trying to get into this century where we're digitizing everything. Then we have the strategic leader. Notice that we have direct, plan, and improve. This is the strategy, the leaders within our organization. And this class is important for both of these tracks. So you can become a managing professional or you can become a strategic leader by having this digital and IT strategy class along with direct, plan, and improve. And when you get both of these certifications, you can apply to be an ITIL master. Notice we don't have ITIL expert on here, but there's still a transition to if you currently have 17 credits from your V3 classes, then you can sit for this managing professional transition class. Or if you're an ITIL expert, take advantage of this because it goes away July of 2021. Right, so they're taking away that transition. It's been over 2 years. So if you are an ITIL expert, what you'll learn in this 5-day class is a little bit from all of these classes, and I'll teach you how to pass the exam to become this managing professional. You won't have to take each and every one of these classes. So with that, Wendy, I am finished rambling and I will turn it back over to you and for all of our participants for their questions.
Well, I don't consider that rambling whatsoever. I personally learned a lot myself.
Okay.
I do want to thank all of you again for joining. Does anyone have a question for Judy at this point? I'm taking that as a no.
Nobody has chatted in.
No, ma'am.
All right. Well,
Well,
then I will go back to this slide since I do have a couple of minutes. I failed to mention about these practice guides. These classes up here, now in ITIL4 Foundation, you will get an introduction to those, probably 22, 21 of those practices, enough to be able to pass the ITIL4 Foundation exam. But in addition, out on my ITIL, you'll have full access to all of the 34 practice guides. And these are all in digital format that you can download You can read them on your Kindle. You can print them if that's your preferred way of learning. So those practice guides go into a lot more detail for how you would define, you would engage with your stakeholders on a specific practice, which practices are inputs and outputs of each other, which practices are brand new, which practices have been modified a little bit, like change enablement, to allow that agile way of approving those changes faster for the need for speed, but we also want to ensure that we have stability and reliability following that change being put into production. All right. Any questions now? Remember, if you have a question, there's probably at least one other person on this webinar that has the very same question.
Nobody wants to be the first one to break the ice.
Oh my. All right. Well, I know we have some upcoming classes coming along at Max, and these are virtual classes. So we're still in the pandemic, so all of these classroom learnings are virtual. So, Wendy, can you tell us about the ITIL Foundation classes?
Well, we will be running the foundation class in particularly. I believe we've got it scheduled every other month. And we are also scheduling some of the advanced classes. And I would just encourage you to, look on our website. Feel free to come to me with any questions. And if there's anything that we can do, we're glad to do it. We're glad to have a brainstorming session with you and your teams or whatever to help you make this transition. It's good stuff in ITIL4.
Yeah.
Really, really
Whatever
good
looks like
stuff.
help. I know we have a foundation class in February, one in April, one in July, and one in October. And
Yep.
these are guaranteed to run. So between Joyce Parker and myself, we will be teaching those classes. And as you all have probably already experienced, when you get into a classroom environment, you kind of build your ideas off of other people's questions. And so you learn so much from other people, not just, the content or the experience of the instructor. So I really would
Definitely.
encourage everyone to sign up. And there are some really good price breaks, I know, on those early bird registrations. So, put your plan together. I'm not saying that you all want to become an idol master. Probably that is very rare. But to get this baseline and to understand what ITIL4 Foundation, what can we use from the past, and what will allow us to deliver more value to our businesses, to our organizations, to our customers, our consumers, aligning with these other frameworks. It used to be that these other methodologies were all kind of at odds with each other. It was, oh, we're going to do ITIL or DevOps, lean or agile. Now it's all encapsulated within ITIL4 and allows you to have various methods, right? We talk about the Gartner quote, uh, the 4 different areas. We need to decide we don't just have one way to do service management within our organization. The more rigor is used for those applications and services that need to be in compliance, right, through governance. If we have less risk and less rigor, then we can bypass many of these very rigid processes and practices.
Well, all right, folks. Thank you again so much for joining us this afternoon. And we will conclude the webinar at this time. Dave Ott just said thank you, Judy and Wendy. Thank you, Dave. And we hope to talk with all of you in the near future. Thank you again, Judy.
Thank you for having me, and everyone have a great rest of the day and week. Thank you very much.
All righty.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.